Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
We are speaking with the one and only PJ Farley of Trixter, Eric Martin Band, and now, the mighty Fozzy. Yes. And of course, Quarantine, but we're going to keep that conversation for later. Just before that, we'll tell the folks the new album is called Accent the Change. It is out later in September. And as we say in Montreal, bonjour PJ. Comment allez-vous? How are you?
Fantastic. Yourself?
Good. Nothing says good times like sitting in front of a computer 18 hours a day. But I'm surviving.
Welcome to the new norm.
I know. My Lord, everything is just sit here. But let's get away from that and start talking about this. The new album, Accent the Change. Talk to me in terms of how long you have been putting this together. Was it something that you sort of done in the last 6 months and go, hey, look at this, I've got songs? Or do these songs date back 5, 10, 15 years and you said, hey, let me work them up? Where does the album come from?
I would say it's about 2 years in the making now. It started with one song because there was a time actually where I just wasn't completing songs. I was quiet writing wise as far as writing for myself. And, back in that mode, I was in the baby bubble, Mr. Mom during the day, every day. And it was just, and gigging at night and just not a lot of free time for my mind to wander. And, even when I'd pick up the guitar and stuff, I'd have bits and pieces, but it wasn't just coming easily for me for a couple of years. And then one day it started flowing. Where it would be just an idea and I would put it down. One song started and it kind of wrote itself. I'm like, ooh, there it is. It's back. I'm like, all right. So I got one song. I left it at that. I'm like, all right, it's one song. Let's leave it at that. Maybe I'll get around to, recording it and, who knows? It didn't start, blossoming into this idea of doing a record. And quite frankly, I was not really thinking of doing one because, they're a lot of work. Making records is a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of, and the impact is just not what it once was. And especially when you're doing it the way I'm doing it, where it's, it's a labor of love, wholeheartedly. And so it's a lot of give. The plus side is hearing the reaction with the people that it connects with, people that do listen to it. So that's good, but it's a lot of work that goes into doing a full record. So that song turned into another song. And then I remember I was going out to work with Chuck Alkazian in Detroit to go record this one song. And I booked the flight. And in that time, I had written another one. So I had two. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do two now. Cool. So I'm like, all right, I got two songs. I said, you know what? Maybe I'll do an EP. And I got on this thing. I'm like, you know what? EP, that's it. EPs should be the new LP. No one's got the friggin' attention span for a whole record anymore. People are releasing singles. And I'm like, that's it. I'm going to do an EP. I'm going to call it a full record. Because why not? Who's going to tell me I'm wrong? Nobody's buying it anyway. So here's my new record. And it's 5 songs or 6 songs, whatever it is. And that's the new norm. It should be. No one's got time for 12 songs anymore. I'll never do that again. Put 12 songs in a record. I won't listen to a 12-song record.
Or like the mid '80s when CDs came down and everybody had to have 17 songs on there, and you're like, what the? I don't have time for this.
No, I was the biggest Guns N' Roses fan on the planet, and when they released User Illusions, I was like, guys, too much.
Way too much. That's one great album, by the way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's one great album. It's not 2 great albums.
No, it's not. It's one big mediocre thing.
Yeah.
So I did the 2 songs. I'm like, all right. And then it just kind of started, I started writing and it just started coming to me like, I got all this stuff. It's like they say, use it or lose it. Well, I didn't use it, so I lost it for a little while. And then once the floodgates opened, it started coming to me. And then at some point after about 4 or 5 songs in, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do a record.
You're going to do a record. Let me ask you this. For fans that have followed your career and they've seen you with Trixter and they've seen you with the Eric Martin Band and all this, how different is this from boutique sound frames? How different is this from what you were doing with 40-foot Ringo? I mean, ultimately, is it just PJ Farley playing music, or do those different projects have different visions, different sounds, different meanings? I mean, is a PJ album, or is this something different?
It's it's a PJ album. I mean, because in the sense that I write without any kind of preconceived um, goal or picture or anything. It's just if I'm playing, I got a progression and that magic melody comes to me, I write it, and I'm not really going, all right, but this isn't really like this doesn't go along with this or that. It's just I can do whatever the fuck I want. Um, and it just so turns out that they all have a common thread in the sense that um, it's it's rock music, but it's a little bit more not cerebral, but maybe emotionally
Involved,
demanding.
demanding.
Yeah,
Normally when you put out an album, you're going to go out and play a few shows, you're going to do stuff. This is obviously a very different time, a very different situation. First part of the question is, why didn't you hold on to it for a time when you can go out and play shows? Or B, how do you sort of promote something like this now that you don't have those sort of regular or normal outlets to go promote it?
well, I mean, it's not like I'm doing a regular cycle anyway. It's not like, okay, record drops and then off to the road I go. I mean, I couldn't do that anyway because, I mean, touring's tough. Luckily, I'm grandfathered in, with the bands I play with, and I can, you know, get paid to do what I do when I go on the road. But my personal stuff, I mean, I can go out and do some shows, but I couldn't go out and book a tour. I mean, I'd lose my ass, you know. Um, but I will. I'm going to go out and do shows, and but whenever that happens, it happens. And whatever I do, it's going to be on a smaller scale anyway. So in those venues that I would play pre-COVID, they're kind of starting to open up anyway, and I could, I'm not worried about breaking any capacity guidelines anytime soon. So
What are the guidelines there? Because currently, and we're talking, what are we today? September 14th? 8th? September 8th? Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at my calendar, and that's the first day I saw. September 8th. In Quebec, where I am, Montreal, we're allowed 250 people in a club. So you can
mhm,
really basically have a normal club show.
right,
Faster Pussycat can come to town and they can play.
yeah.
What's the capacity where you're at right now in, I guess, New Jersey?
I don't know if it's a number or I think it's a percentage. I think it's 25% indoor. Um, Hopefully that changes even to 50% um, by say November or something, and then so on and so forth. And it's kind of thing where I don't think I have to go out and tour on the heels of the record release because I think anyone who's paying attention to me releasing a record will be interested either now or in 6 months from now. Anyone paying attention to me, it will
Is
hear about.
like a die hard and will follow you. So let me ask you about this because you have gone out and done a couple of projects during this quarantine thing. So you did the quarantine Kiss band, and I'll get back to that in a second. But you have done shows with Fozzy. You've gone out and played for larger audiences. How concerned were you in doing that? And but also on the positive end, how cool was it that you get to join Fozzy? I mean, is this a permanent gig? Are you just sort of replacing somebody because they're a band that tours and does well, so it's a good gig.
Yeah, yeah. It's well, the first part of the question was I wasn't really overly concerned. Um, I have a little bit of a story for you though, but so before I went out with Fozzy, a couple of weeks prior, we're getting the tour together. We're gonna go out on a bus and go do these shows, and we're going to Sturgis, and there's you know that whole thing we got to deal with. So I told those guys, I'm like, and they're all from Atlanta, basically, and I'm like, all right, guys, I think for the sake of everyone's well-being, I think we should all go get tested before we get on a bus together. Crew, bus driver, everybody. Chris gets tested like every week anyway. And like I said, they're in Atlanta, so I mean, it was a hot spot at that point. I was in Jersey where the numbers were crushed. I haven't been anywhere. So I think for one, I think for our own peace of mind, it'd be good to get on the bus knowing that we all got tested, but also to let anyone who would question, do you guys think it's safe to be on a tour bus together, touring, blah, 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 then we could say, well, you know what? We all were tested and we are, negative. So that being said, we got tested. I got tested. 9 days after my test, I get the results positive. And I'm like, positive? Fuck off. What?
How so? Right.
What? And so the health department calls me. They're like, oh, all right. So do you know what you got to do? I'm like, no, besides get retested because I don't believe the results. If this is what asymptomatic is, it's really asymptomatic. Part of me was like, well, okay, great. Now I don't have to worry about it. Now I can go out to Sturgis and lick handlebars if I want. No, but I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, maybe it's a placebo effect, and it'll give me a little sense of relief, being maybe I have the antibodies. Who knows? I went, and then I came home. I got tested again. I had to jump through some hoops to get tested again, by the way. Make it really difficult for you to get tested if you test positive, even if you're out of, your isolation and everything. So I had to kind of fib in order to get tested, but I wanted to get tested again because if I did have it, now I didn't have to quarantine when I got home because I'm like, well, I got the antibodies. But I was going back out with Eric Martin the following week. So I just want a clean bill of health every time I go anywhere and come back, doing it right and responsible. So I tested negative. I'm like, all right, well, meanwhile, they're telling me that they won't test me again because I could have it for 4 to 6 weeks. Meanwhile, I tested 3 weeks later and I was negative. I'm like, okay. So I go out with Eric, do a couple shows, come back, get tested again, negative. I'm like, haha. All right, there's only one thing left to do. It's been about a month or so now. If I had it, the antibodies would build up. So I got the antibody test and negative, no antibodies. So I had a false positive.
Yeah, and that's kind of some of the issues with the testing in the sense that if you don't believe the positive at the same time, then you can't believe the negative, because if one's wrong, then the other one is arguably could be wrong too.
Can't get a second opinion either because like, nope, we're not testing you again. Nope, we already marked you as a positive, so that's it. We got you.
Yeah,
and guarantee they didn't erase my notch off the positive chart. But
yeah.
So anyway, that's a long-winded story. But so I was excited to go out on the road and play with Fozzy and do that whole thing. And I kind of stepped in because Randy, their bass player, was, a little bit more concerned to go out and tour. And we had this tour booked for October, November that has been obviously since postponed again. So where that stands, I don't know. I told him I'm here for whatever you need me for. So it's a great band. It was awesome. We get along great. Obviously, not only just me and Chris being buds, but me and the rest of the band crew. It was a great fit and it was awesome. So look forward to doing anything that they need me to do.
Them. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I do want to move quickly to Trixter just for a second. This is, of course, the 30th anniversary of Trixter, the debut album. Yeah. Steve had mentioned to me that Steve Brown, of course, had mentioned that you might go do a couple of shows of some kind of degree, not necessarily as a reunion, maybe just you two and go do acoustic or just something to celebrate the 30th anniversary, anything. COVID hits, and of course, well, that's the end of that. So just real quick, talk to me about that album and what it means to you 30 years later, and do you sort of still have this hope that next year you can go do something and say, hey, it's 30 years, or is it like, well, opportunity gone, say la vie, bye bye, we're done.
No, the hope is always there. I mean, because we'd always go out to love, we'd always love to go out and do it, under any circumstances. I mean, 30th, 31st, whatever, leap year, whatever the case is. I mean, who says we can't celebrate a 30th anniversary on the 31st year, given the circumstances? Um, at this point, we would just love to go out and celebrate it in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, obviously, it took a back burner with everything that has happened. So we'll kind of reconvene and see where we're at once it's a little bit easier to get around.
Yeah, well, hopefully it'll come out. I mean, and if you need to replace anybody, there's a guy named Joey Casada who'd make a great Trixter drummer. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I think he'd be great. Yeah, but I'll let him. I'll let him know. Speaking of other bands, you are doing this quarantine thing with Chris Jericho. It is a Kiss tribute. And of course we can make jokes about Joey all afternoon about that, but let's sort of hit the serious part of it. What's sort of the future for that? I mean, was it really just because of these quarantine videos and we'll throw a couple of Kiss songs for fun? Or do you see yourself maybe going out and playing some shows eventually? Because, Kiss tribute bands do very well. Chris Jericho, being the famous wrestler, does very well. You've got a guy in Luke Bryan's band. They do very well. I mean, it wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibilities to fill up 500 seaters, 1,000 seaters. Do you want to do that? Do you want to take quarantine and unquarantine it?
Um, I would love to. I mean, I want to do everything. Obviously, you can tell by my track record. So I'm up for anything. But I mean, obviously, this started as a quarantine project, but then we got No, No, No to number 25, I think 25, 26, which made it the highest charting song off of Crazy Nights. Um,
You actually outcharted Kiss on their own song, which is kind of funny.
Obscure song on the record.
Right, but they didn't have Chris Jericho in the band, so.
Right, exactly. Made Gene very happy and made Paul send a puke emoji. Uh, but nonetheless, and we have, we're still very much, working as quarantine. We have another song already in the chamber, another one right behind that. And it's fun. I don't see why not. We've talked about doing shows. Obviously, um, we're handicapped at this point, but yeah, no, I mean, it's anything's possible. I mean, especially when it comes to having fun, like doing it.
Yeah, so let me talk to you just real quick then about the importance of Kiss in your life and in your career. Obviously, Trixter goes out and opens for Kiss, which exposes you to a whole bunch of fans, which of course is great. Now you're doing this project. Just talk to me about sort of, in a more general sense, your relationship to Kiss and what the band has meant for you.
Kiss is like, so on the flip side of doing just 80s Kiss with Chris and those guys, I did a cover of Mr. Speed with Charlie Benante, John Five, and Joe McGinnis. And we're also working on another one with that one too. So I got my 70s Kiss on too. And that kind of should sum up what Kiss means to me. Like, I can celebrate all of Kiss because they're kind of like a warm blanket for me in the, realm of music. It's what you cut your teeth on. So they're always going to be with me. It's always going to be a reference point. It's always going to be something that's mentioned when I talk about how I started to play music and why I started to play music. One of the biggest reasons.
Which is strange because, well, not strange, but you're younger, So, you know, the Kiss heyday sort of missed you. You sort of caught on to them a little bit later. What was it that first attracted you to the band? Because you probably should have been listening to Ozzy solo or quiet rock. I mean, that should have been more of your wheelhouse, right?
I was listening to that stuff too, but um, the the Kiss, uh, just the whole production, and the mystery of it, and it's like rock and roll, which I loved, and then these guys dressed like they were, and Gene Simmons at that age, kind of scared the shit out of me. Then Ace really was this, you know, mystery in himself. And then you had Paul Stanley, and then I was playing drums at the time, so I loved Peter Criss. So there was nothing that I didn't relate to, or it didn't just grab me by the chest and go, "You got to pay attention to this." And it was just so elaborate. And at that age, it was Kiss and Star Wars, and it was this fantasy of Star Wars, and then Kiss was this rock and roll fantasy. It was like, it was just everything that I loved at that point. So I mean, it was everything all wrapped into one.
Yeah. Well, you know who else loved Kiss? Joey Casada. Joey Casada. He loved. Yeah,
Was that?
I know. I know. By the way, if the drummer in quarantine gets injured, and since you play drums, would you just take over?
Would I just take over?
Yeah, and then we'll just get a new bass player because
Probably easier, right?
I would think so.
I cannot play no, no, no.
On drums, no, no. Um, I want to go back to Trixter for a second. 2012, New Audio Machine comes out. 2015, Human Era comes out. Both fantastic albums. Human Era, personal favorite of mine. Just a return to form. What was that like? You know, coming in 20. Let's have a look at the math here. 18 years, I guess. 20 years after, and getting back into the Trixter mold and putting those albums out. Is it something you'd like to do again? And because it is a brand name, it is sort of a nice, fun, hard melodic rock band. What was it like coming back for a New Audio Machine and then having Human Era, and now, of course, 5 years later, it's like, oh, what do we do? Is Trixter still a concern?
It always is. It's always going to be there. It's the bulk of, our being. So it's always going to be there. It's like this big rock that we sit on. Whether that rock is rolling or not, we're still on it. So it's always going to be there. And when we did New Audio Machine, when we first put the band back together, we weren't talking about doing new music. We weren't fooling ourselves, going, "Oh, we got to do a record now." It's like, uh, does anybody really need a new Trixter record? For what we're doing, we were doing a handful of shows a year. The set list was what people wanted it to be. Um, but then Frontiers came knocking. They're like, "We'd like you to do a record. We'll give you some money to do it." And we had been together long enough at that point, reformed, to go, okay, maybe now's a good time. And then after we did that, we're like, all right, we did that. And then we were like, I probably won't do it again. A couple years later, Frontiers put the seed in again, like, "You want to do it?" And we're like, all right, we had a couple songs. Steve had a couple ideas. And we're like, and we had a good couple of years under our belt doing shows. So like, all right, just for shits and giggles, let's do another one. And then, I don't know, it seems like after we do one, we're like, all right, we're not doing that again. And then we do another one.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
but it came out great. I mean, the two albums came out great, and I think they were a revelation because when New Audio Machine comes out, even as a fan or as a critic, you go, do we really need a new Trixter? And then you put it on, you go, yeah, I guess we kind of do. Right? And then same thing, Human Era comes out, you go, okay, we just had a new Trixter. Do we really need another new Trixter? And then you play it and you go, yeah, okay, we do need this. So
yeah.
what was the sort of the thought process going into it when Frontiers comes to you and says, okay, you're going to do this New Audio Machine, which of course didn't have a title at the time, but they say you're going to make this new record. Do you think, wow, we have to be classic Trixter and we got to do 1990 again? Or do you say, hey, listen, it's 20 some years later, let's just give them something fresh and new? How did you sort of approach that in terms of sound and songwriting? And was it easy or was it not? Or
No, it was very easy. We didn't really concern ourselves too much with um, trying to sound like the past or trying to sound like the present. We just did us, which is what we normally do. Um, But the fun thing was what we did on New Audio Machine is we went back and dug up some of the older stuff, um, and dug into the archives and pulled up some of the stuff that was from you know Trixter back in the heyday, and then we went back and did the same thing with Human Era, with like Rockin' to the Edge of the Night, um, to kind of give it that little shot in the arm of when Trixter was those kids that you grew up listening to. So just to give you a little taste of that organic Trixter without trying to force it and try to replicate it. Like, let's go into the archives and pull something that didn't make one of the records and do it now.
How was the business for Trixter back in 1990? Because you came out sort of at the apex or at the top of what was going on with Dr. Feelgood's out and all these big albums are out, and then by the time you get to Here and Undercovers, you were now on the downward slope. Not just you, but the whole business. How were you sort of treated and seen by the record companies? Were they like, wow, this is a great new band, first album sold gold, let's go? Or were they like, hey guys, had you come out in 1984, we could help you, but you didn't, so too bad. How was sort of the business side of it for you?
Well, like in 1991, it was awesome.
Right.
And by 1993, it was awful.
Like that. I mean, they really just turn on a dime, right? They're like, hey, you're my favorite guy ever. I don't take your calls.
On and off.
It's kind of like a friendship with Joey Casada.
God help me if quarantine ever gets another hit.
I know. Lose my number. Billy, don't lose my number. But no, but so when you get to 93, how does the band react in terms of, because like now the record companies, MCA, which is not really a record company anyway. Is it like is it like a slap in the face? Is it like, wow, what happened here? Like, how did you sort of react in terms of a band?
We always had, although we were cocky and always expected and shot for greatness, and we wanted it, and everything that would happen to us, we expected to happen. But underlying all that, cockiness was always a sense of reality, and we always knew that there's a trapdoor in Cloud Nine, so to speak, and it's just a matter of time before we hit it. So we always kind of kept ourselves in check in that sense. So no, it wasn't surprising. We thought we would have got a little bit more time, to enjoy the fruits of it all. But we're not complaining. And people say, "Oh, if you guys came out earlier, you'd be this, you'd be that." And I go, you know what? If we'd come out earlier, we'd still be right here doing what we're doing,
Right.
just like every other band. And so maybe we have a little bit more money in our pockets. Probably not, but no one's complaining.
No, and if you had come out in 1984, you would have been like 12. So it would have been weird. And I'll finish on this. Were there any times where, oh, look at that, my phone's ringing. Were there any times where you're going through all this where you just said, you know what, it's time to quit. It's time to go, work at FedEx and deliver packages and just forget this music stuff. In a sense, the question is, what sort of kept you motivated in going through the slap in the face, through all the changes, through 40-foot Ringo trying and not working, and why are you still here, basically?
That's a good question, but yeah, I always say, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, you got a great job," blah, and I'm like, "Yeah, it is great right now, but I'll be bagging groceries when I'm 65." I don't know. I'm still full of piss and vinegar, and this is all I've ever done. So, there is part of me that, I just don't want to give up, and I still have a lot more to offer, I think. But also, it's not like I can just go, you know what? I'm going to go become a CPA. I have no college. I have no, skill. I came pretty much out of the womb doing this, what I do now. Um, so I don't have much of a resume, and I don't have much interest outside of music. Um, so there's that. Um, and I'm very blessed.
Right.
I keep getting phone calls to do cool things. So that's cool. That helps. I'll tell you that. It helps when people call you and go, "Hey, we need you for this, or you want to do this," And I love doing that. I love doing that more than anything. Playing with new people and challenging myself um, with new situations and putting myself in a vulnerable position.
Have you ever thought of going on the other side of the business and becoming a manager or a tour manager or a promoter or a producer? Have you ever thought of, hey, maybe as I get older, I should sit on the other side of the desk and be the guy making those decisions and putting on M3s? And has that any interest in that?
Well, I, I'm kind of doing it all actually because for years, ever since I was with Lita, I've been tour managing every band that I've been playing with. Whether it's Trixter, Eric, Ra, um, you know, uh, Lita. So I tour manage just about every band I go out with, and handle the day-to-day stuff and booking the dates, working with the booking agents, and doing the travel and doing all that kind of less celebrated stuff. Um, and I actually enjoy it. I enjoy it. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of open-ended stuff, so it always keeps me preoccupied, and which my wife can tell you that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but then again, there's that side is like, well, there's not a lot of money and glory in that side either.
No, there's
You know?
not. And then last question: when Steve Brown announces that he's doing Tokyo Motor Fest and you don't get the call, how devastating was that? Did you cry?
I couldn't believe that mother effer did one thing without me.
I
I mean,
know.
you thought Joey Casado was mad at me because I did quarantine. Steve's still not living down the Tokyo Motor Fest thing. No, I give Steve a pass, and we do just about everything together. So
Yep.
I was more than glad to see him venture off.
Yeah, and listen, he got. It's a great little band, you know. Hey,
And Remedy could make great records without me.
and well, nobody said they were great. I'm, I'm kidding. Fantastic records. We love them. We.
He's gonna get
I know I'm gonna get shit for that, but no, we do love Tokyo Motor Fest. Big fan. In fact, on Facebook, I was recognized as your top fan, and they gave me a badge. Well, not your top fan, but Tokyo Motor Fest.
right.
I got a Facebook fan badge.
Did you get the badge?
I got the badge. I'm top fan.
Oh, man, good.
I know.
And it should be.
It's very proud.
What's not to love? It's great, especially this new record.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, I'm going to be a top fan of the Accent the Change PJ Farley thing, and next year try not to announce anything on my birthday. It ruined my whole day.
Story is fun right now.
I know. It's my birthday. I look forward to it all year, and then Trickster guy has a new album. I'm like, but what about me? Me.
I thought it was a gift, man. I thought you'd be,
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. I should stop being so negative in my older age. That's a very good point. Thank you.
it's half full.
Thank you. But jokes aside, as a pleasure, always a pleasure. We love Tokyo Motor Fest. We love Human Era. We love Accent the Change, and we will somehow learn to love Joey Casada.
If you do, maybe you'll get a blanket with his face all over it.
A Joey Casada throw rug. That'd be perfect.
There we go about that.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Let me turn off this recording. There we go.